Hi everybody. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully the volume's okay on this. Maybe if someone could let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm just going to start getting ready my colors here. I'm just going to show you guys the paint that I'm using. This is just, I actually just grabbed this, I believe it was from the dollar store, but these are different varieties. I find these are the most inexpensive type, and they're fairly, I like working with them. Another type I do like to use is, I got this from Desserts. This is actually a little bit more of a heavy body, so if you were actually doing like a painting where you wanted a little bit more texture and whatnot, you can usually find a little bit thicker of paints at regular art stores and whatnot. So they are a little bit more pricey, but they do work nice. So these are my neon paints, and then for the other colors, just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay. And a bit of an echo, and yeah, my husband did come down and tell me that he can hear an echo also. I think I had two audio sources sort of hooked up, and I forgot to turn the one off, so I just want to make sure before I go on that maybe if someone could just let me know if that echo is still kind of going on. It's not much good if you can't hear me properly. I'll just wait for that. Oh, there we go. Oh, better now. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you guys just let me know if ever you can't hear me properly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start with the background first, and we're going to do the background layer on this. So I'm actually, one thing I would suggest with these particular paints is to give them a good shake, especially like any kind of craft paints that you get. So I'm just going to do that. I find like there's sometimes like an oil that sort of separates at the top. You guys can see that. So I'm just going to do about, I don't know, maybe that much. We'll start with that much and see how that works out. So if you can see in this background here, there's an orange in between, but that's actually going to be these two colors when they mix together should give a nice orange mix. So we'll just start with the yellow and the pink. Oops. I'm going to give this one a good shake too. At some point in this video, I do have a Blacklight sort of up on my shelf there. I might flick it off once we get going with the painting a little bit. I always find it kind of fun. I'm a big kid. Okay. Alrighty. Now I will say, I'm not sure why I'm still getting used to live videos in general. So in shooting them, and it's a learning experience for me. So I'm always open to any feedback, any suggestions you guys that would make things more helpful for you. And also I should say that I think when I'm using the chats, or when I'm viewing the chat, I think some of your comments may be a little backlogged, and I'm still figuring out why that is. I think it happened with my last video too. There was kind of backlogged comments that I wasn't able to read till a little bit after they had posted. So if you do say something, I will try to kind of peek over and get them as quick as I can. Okay, so so these are the brushes. I'm going to start with my, you can use either of these. Like I have the 1-inch wash. I'll just put those closer for you. This is like a wash brush, or wait, sorry. Here we go. This is called a wash brush. Usually I call it a background brush a lot of the time. And this is a an angular brush, and it's 3/4, I believe, so 3/4 inch. And I find both of these work great for background. So if you have either, and also I always say whatever you're comfortable with. If it's something else, then. So I'm gonna dip. Might bring my water jug up here just so you guys can kind of see when I'm mixing. Mine's still a little murky from when I was painting the layer on my canvas. To kind of whip one up on the fly, that the edges of it are a little wonky. But I'm going to move this down. I'll probably rewrap this canvas afterwards, but you can see there's a little the corners aren't very neat, but I have a video that I'm still in the process of editing because it was actually pretty long, but it just shows how I make my canvases. There's like a weird shadow there. It's not helpful. Okay. Maybe we'll just move that out of the way for now. Whoopsies. Okay. I'm going to grab my paper towel. Leave that. I might just grab a painting rag. Okay. So, I'm going to put my little painting rag here, just so you guys can kind of see when I'm dabbing my brush. So, I'm going to actually do the wash brush for this one. And what I'm going to do is, I just got it a little bit wet with some water, but I don't want it to be like sopping wet. So, I'm just going to, So, I'm going to start with the lightest color, so the yellow, and I'm just going to saturate the brush like that. And then I'll come back, and what I'm going to do is, it's going to be a little different probably if you're painting on a rectangular canvas. Maybe, but I'll try to do it as, or explain through that part where yours may be a little bit more squished. But basically what you're going to do is, I like to think of it as like breaking the canvas into 3 sections almost. So you're going to do maybe a third and another third up here of like the two initial colors. So, and And I'm just doing a kind of back and forth sweeping motion. Like that. I didn't get a chance to sand down as finely as I like my primer here, so my paint isn't going on super smooth today. Oops. There's fuzz in my painting. Okay, there we go. Okay. I'm just going to check. Hi, June. Okay, there we go. All right, so if you're it may just be that the background of my primer isn't super sanded, as smooth as I would have liked. But if you are finding you're getting a bit like too much patches there, or it's not, your paint isn't really going on very smooth, just go ahead and get a little bit more water on your brush and you kind of add it. You can kind of loosen up the paint a bit. So now that I've got that color laid, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to grab a little bit more here, like this. And that's about a third of the way. And then I'm actually going to go and, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to just rinse, and I even like kind of rub off on the bottom of my bucket there. And I'm just going to kind of get off as much of the paint as I can. You don't have to worry too much because yellow is pretty forgiving. It's a very light color. It's not going to affect things too much. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab some of this pink now. And I'm just going to spread that along the bottom in a nice thick coat. And I'm just kind of trying to go from one end to the other in nice kind of smooth brush strokes. You want to get it to be smooth, and when you're going into blend, you kind of want to, sometimes if you're doing this kind of brush stroke, you're going to get these sort of jagged brush strokes, and sometimes they don't look as smooth if you want to have that really blended look. So I'm just going to kind of do this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of bring that up to here about, and I said it was going to be a third, but I'm going to kind of just go about up to here. And then what I'll do is you kind of have like a strip in the middle where you're going to be doing some blending there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually rinse my brush in the cup again, because whenever I want to go into blend, I want to have like a cleaner brush. That's okay. Okay. It's mostly just stained. So I'm going to just kind of start loosening up. I'm going to just basically grab water. So I just dipped my brush again, and I'm just going to kind of loosen up this paint and bring that down. I don't want to have a whole lot of paint, so that's why I left sort of like a little strip of white there, because I'm more or less going to kind of drag that paint down until I can kind of just blend the two sections. And I'm going to dip again because I need a little, so I just kind of shake off a little bit of the water. I don't want to get any paint drips down my page, but if you see there, I'm just kind of, so wherever the two colors meet, just take your brush and kind of drag it along there until your colors kind of meet up, and then go back and forth until you get almost like this fuzzy kind of look. You don't want to add too much water, because like if you notice like it starts to get too much of the canvas showing through, then just kind of take your brush and squeeze out some of the liquid. So I don't want to get too I don't want to work that too much. I just want it to be kind of nice and blended, because now I want to come back up with the pink, and I want to kind of put another little strip of that there to kind of work back up into the and you notice I'm really only staying in this midsection here. I'm not really going way up or way down. It's kind of just, I get to the end and I move up one, say, and I'm just going to kind of keep sweeping back and forth, and you'll see the color kind of starting to come out. And I always kind of go from like the dark to light, and then when you get near the top, like your brush right now is going to be picking up paint as it goes. So eventually, like when you're blending, you kind of want to have it a brush that's free of paint as a rule, so that the colors are blending in and you're not like overlapping your nice light gradients and whatnot with too much pigment. So what I do is, now that my brush is kind of loaded after a few brush strokes, I'll come back, because I want to blend this orange up a little bit more and kind of fuzz that out a little bit. So if I were to come right up with this pink, it would really just it would be too dark for that area. So I'm gonna really just rinse my brush really well. And I always say, like, the lighter the colors you're working with, the more you want to really make sure not to miss this particular step. So I just really kind of squeezed my brush out. My brush is pretty clean. So my paint and canvas is both very wet. So depending like how much moisture is on your canvas, you may need to add a little bit more water to your brush to be able to loosen your paints up. But since I have mine pretty soaked here now, so I'm just going up into the yellow, and then, oh, there's something on there. I'm going to come back down and keep doing that until I get a nice orange that starts to peek out. I'm getting a lot of fuzzes. Oops. Okay. There. So, and there you'll get this sort of color start to show. And I think what I'm going to do is, now that I have this pink on my brush, I'm just going to go and rinse this off, because I'm going to grab a bit of the yellow again. And you kind of want to, you can keep switching back colors back and forth as you go. Like, I'm finding this area here could be a little more, I want to have more orange. And I'm going to start right up in the light, and then I'm going to work my way down. But I probably don't want to go back up too far into the yellow, because then it would just kind of ruin all of that nice light. But I'll go up just a little bit and kind of stop off there. And then I can continue on, but I'm going to rinse my brush again, because I'm going back into the lighter color. So I'm just going to squeeze the excess, and I'll just kind of lightly dust over, or like sweep over those to kind of soften them a bit. Now, don't feel, I hope nobody feels like they're behind or anything. It is difficult for me to know. It's different, actually, because usually I'm walking around the room and I can see where everyone's at as a whole. So it's kind of, I usually going too fast for anyone. I'm going to check the comments and just see if there's any questions or anything in 1 second. But yeah, so basically you've got this sort of orange middle section, and then the yellow top, and I'm just going to leave that kind of to dry a little bit. You can come back, like this one here is a lot more separated, where you can really see the colors. Like the orange middle section is a little more, like, has a little more pop to it. But what I like to do is, when your paint is very, very thin and wet, like, it's really hard not to get that canvas to show through, because you're basically brushing over like a really thin, almost liquid like paint. So I like to just let it kind of set almost, like, and get a little bit tacky, and then I'll come back and I may brighten up that middle orange. But I think it looks kind of tropical. So I'll let that dry, and I'll also, this will probably be like a time that we can just kind of take it just probably 10 minutes to let your background dry. So when you get to this point, and I know not everybody may not be right here, but if you are, I'd say just set your brushes down, and if not, don't worry, we'll try to make sure that nobody's behind and doesn't have at least their background like layered down and ready to let it dry. So right now I'll just go, and yeah, you can also take that time to swap out your water if you wanted to. It's not really super necessary right now, but some people like to have their water changed out like always and have really fresh water. So now's your chance. And then I'll just I'll check the comments and see if anyone is feeling stuck or is behind or anything, and then we'll come back and we'll start laying down the initial shapes for the flower. Okay. Oh no, Vicky, for you didn't. Yeah, I know. And see, I thought that Vicky said that she forgot that there was this started in a different time zone, but hopefully you're able to watch the replay, Vicky, and yeah, I'm gonna start probably putting that in brackets in each post. I've put it in a couple, but sometimes I'll forget to put that on. I wish there probably is a way to make it kind of sync up to show each person, like, who's viewing the event, that it's like their own time zone, but I'm not quite sure yet. This is all sort of new, but if anyone does know, I would love that, because I always wonder, like, yeah, because I'm in Nova Scotia, so I'm not sure if you're seeing it as, like, who is seeing it as, like, 6:30 their time or my time, but, yeah. Hi, Mom. My mom's here watching me. Okay, so I don't see any questions. So hopefully everyone who's painting right now, like, is at the same place that I am. I'm just gonna leave that there for a moment. I'm not sure if, oh, I got in. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it's a good time, Vicky, because we're just about to go for a break, so don't worry. We'll give you a chance to get caught up. It's actually this. It's kind of totally fine for this painting, because some paintings, like, you really need that background to be super dry to start building the layers. But this one's a little more forgiving because you're really just going to be doing the initial shapes at first, anyways, and we'll do this kind of circular area as well, and the shape. So also, I'll suggest, Vicky, if you have good ventilation and a blow dryer, I would say just take that, and that will speed things up too. Sometimes I'll do that if I'm in a pinch, but yeah. So I'll just I'll leave this here. I'm hoping I didn't miss anyone's questions or anything. If anybody has, like, throughout the painting, if anyone wants to send me, like, progress photos or any, here, I'll move over so you guys can see me. If anyone wants to, or also if you have a question and you need to show me, like, visually, just send me a message on the paint party page, and I should be able to answer it. And I'm hoping to do, like, actual Facebook or Zoom, a variation of the two, like, kind of like rooms. I've been experimenting with Facebook rooms where people can join in and actually see. I can, like, it's so I can see their video, kind of like a Zoom room. If you guys have been in those, you can kind of see. It's like a FaceTime video chat type thing. And also Facebook rooms, which is, I'm totally new to, so I'm just exploring it, but it's pretty cool. It seems like you can add up to 50 people, and it's free. And yeah, people just join in, and you get the little like squares up on the screen, kind of like miniature video feeds of each person. And I mean, I think it's optional for the person to, if you don't feel comfortable showing your video, that's cool too. But it might be nice for some people to be able to interact that way. So it's more, if you have questions, or I'm able to also see where you're at with your art, like, as you go along too. So yeah, that's all going to be stuff that I'm kind of developing as I get these going. I was spending so long kind of figuring out a way to get the art out for people, or get my art and share it. And I just I said, you know what, I'm just gonna dive in because it's so there's so many choices and there's different approaches to it. But I figure I'll try a few things out, and I'll get the feedback and see and then we'll go from there and figure out the best way that works for everybody. So yeah, I'm happy that everyone's I'm happy for you guys coming out. It's really fun and awesome for me. So yeah. Okay, so we'll just leave that sit now. I'm gonna just I'll put on a little music here for anyone who's finished and they're just waiting, and we won't be long. I'll give it another 5 minutes. And Vicki, if you want to let me know when you're cut up also, and I'll do a quick check. So it's about, well, it's 6:55, so we'll come back for 7 o'clock Atlantic time. All right. Oh, I guess my music's not going to work. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, maybe I'll bring this up here just as I'm explaining this. So what I'm going to do is, I usually start with lighter colors before dark, but in this case, I'm going to, or sorry, dark before light. So what I suggest is if I would keep your, one of your brushes kind of just designated for the lighter, like neons and even the reds, and then when you're working with the blacks, like just keep your brush separate for the separate brush for that, and trying to mix the two in the beginning anyways. So what we'll do is I'm just going to do these two initial shapes for the center of the flower, and then we're going to do kind of like a background. It's going to be like almost like just like red petals to start off, and that's just going to give like a kind of background to like a little bit of depth to the petals. So start with that, and then once I get those petals and everything, for anyone who has Blacklight, you can see the effect that it does. It's kind of fun. Okay, so I'm actually going to see if I can move this over here so I don't miss any of your comments as I'm painting away. If I can put it in a spot I can view a little easier. Or maybe I'll do that the next break. I don't want to pull any cords out. Okay. There. All right. So I'm going to start with my my half angular, I think is what I have it down there as, and it's I'm trying to get one to show you here. So this one here, this is, I'll just put this close up. It's just like I'll put it in comparison to the other angular, just so you can see the, there we go. So it's just this one. There's also a smaller, even smaller one of this, but it's the medium of the three. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and I'm going to grab my red. So I'm just using this. I got this at Michael's. It's just like a artist loft. I use so many different varieties of paint. I actually really like Art Noise paint also, like from they have a really nice acrylic paint that I like to use the red hue of their medium red. It's really nice. I can't remember what they actually call their tone. It's funny how every well, a lot of different paint is called something different depending on the brand, so it can get a bit overwhelming to try and keep track of the different names. Okay, so here's my red. So it's just like a medium red, or cadmium red, it can be called a lot. So so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to coat my brush, and I don't want to have like too much excess paint on my brush, just like a nice even thinner coat, and because I don't want to get any big clumps on my canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, because I'm not going to start right with black. I'll maybe put this up. I'm not sure if you guys have a little side picture of this or not, but I know some people like to see as I'm going along. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of, so I would say like roughly the middle of your canvas. Now, one thing I will suggest is try to like visualize where you're going to be putting the petals maybe beforehand, even if you kind of draw them out a little bit in your mind, just so that you kind of don't leave yourself with too much center of the flower, and then not any room to kind of put your petals, right? Unless that's what you're going for. Okay, you might want some small little petals. And I always say, if anyone's feeling like they want to experiment and change up the colors or anything like that, I'm never offended by that. I think that's totally cool. And I love to see like different variations, and a lot of times when I do my events, I actually bring a bucket of different colors in case someone wants to get creative. Okay, so I'm just going to do the center. So it's just like a half circle here. So about that size, right in the center. So you want to leave maybe equal parts on each side. And then I'm just going to do a rim around. So I'm going to leave like maybe an inch or two space. And then I'm just going to kind of, so I'm going to put this down so I can show you guys this properly. But I'll bring this closer. So whenever I'm trying to get like a nice clean line, I'll paint with the tip. I call this the tip of these brushes anyways. And I point that the opposite direction that I'm painting. So for instance, if I'm going to, I don't know if you can see that there, but I'm going to go this way. So I have the tip pointing that way. And if you kind of just hold it out, maybe even if it's slightly on an angle, and try to make sure you don't have any big clumps on your brush, you can just kind of smooth it out, and then just kind of come in and this is what I do if you want to get like a really clean line. That there, and I just kind of wrap it around. And you can kind of come under it and sort of just be a little more free with it. I'm going to get a little more water on my brush because, and what I like to do is sometimes I'll take like a teardrop amount of water or something, and I'll just mix it in with a little bit of paint to make my paint, if it's not flowing very well, or if it's not very smooth on my canvas and I'm getting a lot of patchiness, we'll just add a little bit of water so that you can also add like gesso, or water will take the pigment ultimately out of your paint the more water you add. So if you really want to keep the original hues, it's always kind of better to add gesso, like a clear gesso, to kind of thin out or you know, thin out your paints. But water is, I find, totally useful in most situations. It's not really necessary to add the gesso for everything. Okay, so now that's kind of just like a bullseye shape there. And then now what I'll do is I'm going to kind of start with these. So I'm going to do like every other one just to kind of, this, I find this will help get kind of it more symmetrical. So I'll start with one that's kind of, I just grabbed a little more straight of this cadmium red, and this is the same brush here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do one that's kind of like one that comes right out, and then I'll space them out, and then I'll come back and I'll do the ones kind of like in front. Not sure if that makes sense, but so I'll just kind of do the outline of this, and you can feel free to add your own kind of flair onto these if you want to do different style of petals, or so I'm kind of just putting that behind there. So this is going to be like the first petal, and it's sort of like in front, and then this one's going to be the darker one. So I'm going to kind of fill that in with red, and I'm just going to lay my brush like flat when I do that, and I'll add a nice smooth layer. You want to try, especially with this flower here, you want to try to kind of, I'm going to add a little more water because it's very dry where I'm painting right now, but depending on the humidity where you are, you may not need to as often as I do. But so I'm going to just kind of add those on, and then you want to go for like a nice smooth layer. Like if you have a lot of like chunks and whatnot, even if you wanted to add texture, I always say to like do that at the end even, because that way you have your kind of nice base coat there, and all the colors will pop more. So I'm going to just grab some more straight. I might grab a little bit more of that watered paint just so it will flow a little better. My paint's a little bit sticky. So I've got this one, and then, so all I've done is I basically, if you can imagine, this is like the first petal, and then this is kind of hiding behind, so it's covering, so that's why that shape doesn't go all the way around. And then even though I can't really see this, I'm going to actually just trace it. So I have I'm doing that kind of clean line brush stroke again, and then I'm going to just go like that. You can kind of see it. I'm not sure. I'll go up close, like, so you guys, so yeah, you can kind of see just from the brush stroke itself that the separation even though it's red on red. But, and then you kind of just go out as far as you think it kind of, so all I'm doing is kind of like a leaf or a teardrop shape. I'm just kind of going nice and slow here so you guys can see, but kind of just bow it out at the bottom like a water droplet or a tear. So you're going to do just like a curve and then a little point at the top. And then I'll just kind of leave that sit there for a sec. And I'm going to just grab a little more water to add to my, so that was just like I dipped my brush there. And it'll just help to kind of loosen it up a bit. And then I can kind of test it out and see what the brush stroke's going to be like. Move this over a little bit. And I also have this little spray bottle. It's optional, but I like to use that. Sometimes I'll just mist my paint over the top if I'm going to be letting it, like a big blob like this, for instance, it may get kind of like a hardened glare on top. So I just, that works for me. So I just kind of started doing that. Okay, so then I'm going to come back and I'm going to, so it may be a bit tricky to do it this way for some, because I know you can't really see the red with the red background, but if you want to, you can always do just the petals first if that kind of seems easier. And there's no like set amount of petals. I always say like if you're more comfortable with like kind of sketching out the petals beforehand and like laying them out first and then kind of coming back and adding everything, then that's fine too. Or even you could use like a really light color of paint and lightly sketch and just make sure that you know where you want to lay them. But this, you can also do this way where, and wherever I'm going, I'm just going to kind of let that go off the canvas because the length it would just kind of continue on like that. So when you get to the bottom of your canvas, so mine's kind of like squished this way, but your petal may actually not need to go off that particular way. You just kind of go with it, and kind of as long as you're spacing them somewhat evenly, then and that's the thing like with flowers too, is that they're not always perfectly symmetrical. So they're kind of forgiving that way. So then like instead of doing it this method, you could then come back. What I'm going to do here is then you can add these little behind ones, and they're basically the same shape, only what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of stop short, so they're just kind of in behind, and then you can fill that in. And I like to leave these a little bit shorter and smaller than the ones that are in the front, just because it kind of makes it look like they're kind of smaller, they're behind and distant, I guess. Okay, so there's that. And then don't worry about getting these like perfect either. I know some people worry a lot at this stage, like whenever I do a Gerber daisy as well, and sometimes people get worried about that their shaping of their petals and whatnot isn't good or any of those things. And I always say, like with acrylic paint especially, it's so forgiving where you can come back and you can reshape these. This is really just like the beginning layer. You're just kind of mapping out where you're going to put them. Like for instance, if I didn't like this, eventually I could just come back once it's dry even, and just still do that and add more to one of them. You can always build up upon them, and if you can make the curves again. I may come a little bit further out with this one, just because I like them to be a little longer than the background ones. But yeah, you can come out and just add like a little bit of a point to some of them. There. Okay, so I'm actually going to go right here because these ones are the in front ones. I'm just going to kind of smooth that, curve that around. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, this may also help like visually kind of show you guys, or like for anyone who's kind of lost where they've like, I know some people will get mixed up with the placement of these, so this may help. Like if you can do this at any time really, but I just rinsed my brush because I'm switching colors, and I'm going to come back in with a little bit of yellow here, and actually I'm going to put a little bit of my titanium white as well. Here it is. This is also just like a Michaels brand that I'm using. Okay. So I don't need a lot of this white. I'm just really adding it because yellow is very translucent. And I just want the yellow to have a little bit of opaqueness because it will help to kind of make those define the shapes better. Like cover the background more. Okay. So I want to kind of still keep the yellow hue, but I've mixed it was about, you know, half a pea size amount really, and you just kind of mix it in until you can kind of tell when it starts to get that milky kind of hue, and it's not as like see-through. There. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around and put like a little edge around these, just so that just for myself, and also so you guys can see where the edges lie as you're following along. So, and I'll even do these little ones here, but I won't go all the way down or anything. And I'll just do that. And don't worry if you muck up your yellow a little bit, that's fine. This is all, the joy of this one is it's very, it's almost like abstract. So like the colors are all kind of wild and free. There's no real rules to this one at all. Okay. And right here, I'm actually going to do another little petal there that's dark. So I'm going to rinse my brush just because I'm switching colors. You probably have or didn't do this part, or you may have already filled this in. Right here, I forgot to put my little behind petal. So here we go. I might cover you for a second. I can stand. Sometimes I'll paint sideways and my painting starts going lopsided. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you can see the it getting defined there a bit. So what I'm going to do now is so the idea is to keep these a bit darker and these a bit lighter, or a lot lighter than the background one. So what I'll do is I'm going to do one or two and just kind of show you guys the technique I'm using for the petals in general, and you're going to apply it to all of them. So I'll do a couple of light ones and a couple of dark, and then you can kind of just, once you get the hang of that, you can kind of just start working away at them, and it's kind of a little bit more free, where you don't really have to follow anything too strict. Like with it basically is the same method over and over, and you'll notice that like as you start doing it, you'll see the pattern kind of emerge. And then as it dries, also you're going to need to take like a come back to certain areas. So you'll work away at one petal, and then to come back and add the highlights, for instance, you'll have to, it's always better to wait till one layer kind of dries, and then when you add the lighter colors, they will pop more instead of getting kind of mixed in with the darker. It's really hard to put, for instance, like a really light yellow over top of a dark red when the red's still wet, because it will just kind of soak in and get kind of lost. So I'll just show you what I mean, and maybe visually, and then hopefully it'll make sense then. Okay, so what I'll do here, so I'm just going to get a little water on my brush again, and then, or wet it because it was quite dry, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to grab just a nice thick coating of this red again. So I'll start with this one because it's sort of jumping out at me here because it has this paint here already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just follow the same line. I'm going to try to stay inside of this light edge, and I'm just going to follow those same shapes, and then I'm going to fill it right in, and just follow the shapes of the petal with your brush strokes, and just kind of lightly fill that in. So you want it to still be wet, and then while it's still wet, you're going to kind of grab just like either your pink or your yellow, and you can kind of just intermix these. Even if you put both on your brush at the same time, just grab a little of both. It's really not something you want to really overthink a whole lot either. So what you can do is you can start adding these kind of little highlights along each flower. So as you do that, I would say to get like a napkin handy even, and you can even wipe the excess paint instead of having to like rinse it every single time, because you're going to be doing this a bit. And then you can kind of just do a few of these, right? Now, because what I was saying earlier, where it's still wet, they're not going to pop as much, right? So you may get like you can do a few, and then just to kind of get that first initial ones on, and then right into the red again. And I'm going to fill in this one, but while it's still wet, I'm going to do the same thing. So, oh, and I went over my little light line there, but that's okay. I can redo that anytime once it's dry. So I just kind of filled that in again. And then I'm actually going to rinse this one because that's quite a lot of paint on my brush. And I'm going to just pat it dry. And then I'm going to grab again just some of this pink and yellow. I'm not really overthinking it a lot, just grabbing either of those colors. They will both show up on here. So, and I've got that same, I'm doing that same brush stroke where the tip of my brush is the opposite direction I'm painting, and I'm just going in towards the center with, so yeah, you're just kind of getting these nice little highlights on the petals. And I'm going to rinse again. You can just wipe if you want to, if you're, you don't need to kind of rinse each time, but okay, so there, I've got some more of this, and essentially it just needs to be something lighter than your red, something that's going to show up, because we're going to be putting multiple layers of that anyways. So, and maybe I'll come down to this one. Actually, so that one, it would actually be this one. So I need to do this red first, actually. So maybe I'll do that first. I actually have a extra brush here. So what you want to do is, yeah, sorry, you do the red. I didn't realize I hadn't done those yet. So I'm just going to do my red here. So there's this one. I don't want to lose track of where my separation line is. So I'm just going to fill it in. I'm just taking straight cadmium red. And I'm going to put on a nice, you don't want it to be too chunky again. Yeah, just make sure you keep your paint smooth if you can. There we go. And I just smooth that down. And then I'm just going to stick that brush away for a second. And actually, I may as well do that other one at the same time. I've got my rag here. I'm going to do my other petal. I'm kind of doing them in stages, because if I were to do all of these red all at once, then they would dry up before I could probably get to them. So I do, you know, a couple at a time and kind of work it that way. So this one here is going to be red. Oops, a deep red. This is just straight cadmium red again, like this. Okay. So these two are wet. That one was just kind of like one of these background ones, but I'm going to come back with this brush, and I'm going to do my lines. Whoops, well, maybe I'll start this way. So I just kind of start at the outer edges, and I just do a few curved lines. I just am following the shape of the petal itself. And there we go. And I might go over that. So when that dries, that you'll be able to come back again now, and you'll be able, I'm going to do this one now too. I'm actually going to just wipe my brush this time and grab a little more of the light. I'm going to grab a little more white, maybe mix that in with the yellow and orange kind of paint, and just kind of highlight that one. You don't need to get too detailed with it or anything, just a few little flicks of it, and just leave that to kind of set. And when you come back the next time, you'll have these nice kind of defining lines in the background, and you can add even brighter ones and different colors. You can get as wild or plain as you want. I'm going to put out my, I'm going to check the comments in a second just to make sure that everyone's, I'm not losing anyone or confusing anyone. Sometimes I confuse myself. So I'm going to put a little bit of black here. Just okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I guess when my camera for the palette like shut off, that also was my audio feed, and I wasn't actually sure which one what it was attached to. So now I know. It's coming back on now. So you guys should have a feed of the palette in a moment, but um, hopefully everyone who's painting along is feeling okay with where they're at now. Um, and nobody's feeling stuck. That's the most thing. So this here, this area here, if you look real close, there is a tiny bit of it's almost like a red in the center, and well, all that really is I'm going around it with black, and then I'll add a little dot of red and kind of lightly blend that a bit. And so I'm going to do that part now, just so that it has a chance to kind of set. And I'm just checking the time here, so 7:30. So we're about an hour in, and so it's actually pretty good. I hope everyone's following along okay. But what we'll do is we'll get the really dark areas kind of laid out. We'll let them dry, and we'll probably take like another quick break, and that'll allow anyone who is kind of, I know Vicky, you said you were just drawing your painting at one point, and I hope that you've had a chance, you haven't been having too hard of a time getting caught up to this point. So if that'll be a great chance for you to catch up then too. So I'm going to lay out just these black kind of areas, and I'm not going to do a whole lot more on these for now, because when we come back we'll do a lot more of these really pop or really vibrant kind of highlights, and that's optional also. I like to add them for this particular piece because it just kind of goes with the whole bright neon. I don't know, it's just kind of groovy, I guess. It's just the name of it. Okay, so all I'm doing here, and actually, see, I don't have to, I'm going to see if I can get this feedback to you before I explain this, because I'd really like you to see the colors that I'm using. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's good. All right, and the palette, everyone can hopefully see that. Okay, here we're gonna go back. I'm gonna just move this back over. It's about there. That's probably good. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go in. I'm gonna actually grab a little bit of the medium red, and I may grab another little brush just so I don't mix my paint. Or even, I like to use these. Sometimes you get these at the dollar store too. These little cheapy ones, like painting knife. Just so you can use a brush too. It's no big deal. But I'm going to just add a little bit of red into my black. The reason I'm doing this is so that if I want to go back then and add, it just makes it a little less bold. So if I then wanted to darken any specific areas or add any kind of really outlines on things, the black will actually like be stronger and overpower this kind of, even though this is gonna look like almost identical to black. So that, like, to make it eye, you wouldn't even probably be able to tell, but it's just kind of cool to do it that way, because then now if this wasn't beside black right now, you would probably just even see it as black. You can kind of tell more when it's directly beside it. It's very, to see it look on that brush, it just looks very, very dark. So you can, you kind of just, it's going to probably come out, if you do mix a little red in, it's probably going to come out as like a deep, almost like a chocolate brown, I'm going to say, or a very deep maroon. Yeah, and on your painting, it's probably just going to look very black. So I'm going to go around, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow that same line around, just do one circle there. Mine may be a little smaller than yours because you're on a 16 by 20. So if you, or some of you may be painting on a 16 by 20. But if you wanted to like go up a size in brushes too, some people will ask like what size brushes for which canvases. And I always say like just if you're comfortable using a certain one and it's working better for a certain area, like sometimes even these areas you could even switch to. I usually always recommend like having one of these for a lot of these smaller like tight areas in between the petals and whatnot, like the smaller version of the this angular brush. So there's that, and then I'm just going to go around and I'm going to outline. Now, if you can find, it won't be right where that yellow is. It's probably going to be up a bit. So maybe like a little bit, an inch or have it a half inch where you left off with the yellow. And kind of just redo that outline too. And yeah, you don't have to like to blend it or anything now at this point. You can just kind of lay it out and just leave it there like that. And that's just kind of to do your initial lines. Now, I'm gonna just give that a moment because I don't want to rush ahead on anyone. But there's just gonna be this one. Oh, look at that! I know we just lost that audio or the palette again. So that's something's going on with that camera. We'll have to fix. I'll fix that during the break. But I'm hoping you guys can still hear me. I'll just come back. I'll bring this up here so you guys can see in this camera. All right, so here it is up here, actually. You can probably see this. Almost looks like purple now. So anyways, I'm going to just kind of go in with this, and I'm going to just kind of now take this and just kind of lightly bring that down a little bit. I'm going to put this down. I have this little brush, and then once I have my shapes laid out, I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm using this little one now just because like this line is, oh my Band-Aid, this line is so close to here that if I use like a big wide brush, it would probably cover too much of the yellow. So, oh yeah, I keep going to put it under that palette. But so now that I've kind of gotten that rinsed off, I'm just going to dab it, and I'm going to go right along where the two colors meet. So right where the pink and the, I'm going to say it was like a dark red meet, I'm going to sweep along that. And I do have a little bit of water on my brush, so it helps to kind of loosen that background. And you can see it kind of starting to fuzz out there, or blur. You get that blurry kind of edge. And it's not working so well here because I've lost a lot of my moisture. And I'm gonna just rinse my brush really well, and then I'm gonna kind of just pat it dry. And I don't want like a lot of water on my brush, so just enough to kind of loosen up the paint. And I always say like right here in this area, like you really want to just stay. You don't want to go up and down too much, just along that edge. And I'm just kind of sweeping back and forth. So that's pretty much the effect. I just blurred it a little bit. I might come a little closer so you guys can kind of see what I mean by that. I just kind of stole some of this paint essentially with just liquid pretty much on my brush. I didn't add any paint. I just kind of loosened this paint and brought it down a little bit just to kind of give it a little bit of a fuzzed out look so it's not so separated, because this is all kind of essentially supposed to be one piece, right? And then you can do the same with this. Your paint may not be, it may be pretty dry. Like there, this is another technique you can use. I'll get really close to this. I think they call it scrumbling, or I forget what the term is, but you kind of just lay your brush down And this is that small angled one, and you go along the edge, right where the paint. And if it's really not lifting, and I'm applying a bit of pressure there, but if it's not lifting well for you, then you can just add a little bit more moisture, but you really don't want to add too much. And then you get that kind of smoky look. Now you could totally leave it just the straight lines too. It's just whatever you prefer, but I kind of just like this. I find it gives it a bit of like almost like a round effect too. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for that stage. So I won't do too much more with that. I'm going to probably take a break to leave that to dry and to fix the camera feed here that's going on. I'm going to probably just switch it out, and that way you guys will have a palette view again. I think the comments, if any are coming in right now, they take I think there's a bit of a delay for how long they take to get to me, but I will come back and check just when I come back to make sure everyone's okay. And in the meantime, if anyone wanted to send me where their paintings right now in messages or anything, I'd love to see them. Or if you want to wait till the end or not at all, that's cool. I just really love seeing the stages and also finished pieces. So always feel free to share those because it's really fun for you to see the different outcomes. And yeah, so we also will probably, I'll come back, and when we start adding these things here, the little sprigs that are inside of, or seed, I don't know, like the little seed sprigs, I call them seed sprigs. I'm sure they have a proper name, but these things here, we'll get these kind of laid out, the first layer of them, and then we'll put the black light on and we can watch it all glow. Okay. So I guess we'll give it about, I'm going to say, so it's 1:45 right now. I think we'll just leave it right till 8, and that'll give a nice 15 minutes. It'll give everyone who, I'll just leave this here, and I'll leave the camera feed going, and I'll just put, you may see a little message up at the top that says be back in 15, but that's just for anyone who's joining right now. Just continue on, and you can use this as like a visual if you want to, if anyone's stuck or needs to catch up, and then the rest of you can just kind of let it dry, or if you wanted to go on your own and start, if you feel comfortable carrying on without me, like following along with me, then you're welcome to do that too. Okay, so I'll see you guys soon. Hopefully I can get the palette view back up for you guys. Okay, hey everybody. Back now. I think I've got the camera sorted out. Hopefully everybody can see this palette feed now. Just move that around there. Okay, so I also got my Blacklight kind of ready to go. I'm just going to do a demonstration once we get painting a little bit more, some more colors laid on, and when I'm also going to use some straight neon paints over top of these darker petals, and then we'll put the light on, and we can show you guys the black light glow, which is kind of fun to do. So I'm just going to do a check in the comments, make sure there's no questions before we get started. Okay, awesome. All right, so here we are. So we've, I hope everybody's caught up to this point thus far. I'm going to go now, and I'm going to grab my smaller angled brush again. You can also use the larger one, but I'm going to just use this, and I'm just I got it a little bit wet, and then I'm just going to kind of pinch out some of that liquid. And I'm going to go right into, I'm going to grab my neon paints again. Now these have been sitting for a while, so I'm actually going to give them another little shake, because they do actually, they do separate quite a bit. Especially these craft kind of style ones, but they do glow really well. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead. I'm not too worried about this stuff underneath. Mixing in, it's pretty well. Okay, and that's my yellow. And then I'm going to also just shake up my pink a bit. I'm going to add some fresh stuff because I want it to really pop. Now, something I will suggest, my white's pretty clean, but you want to maybe have a little pile of clean white titanium white so that you can kind of make some of these, like if I grab a little bit here, I might do another little side pile and just grab a little bit of white and mix that in, and what you're going to get is kind of like a bubblegum shade of it, and it's just going to help you to add different shades of highlights, and also it's more opaque because the neons are quite translucent, and so if you want to get that coverage in certain areas and really have it kind of stand out and cover the background, then you can use the more a little bit of titanium white. I'm also going to do the same thing with the yellow. So before I do that though, I'm going to rinse off my brush just to get the pink off and kind of dab it off. And I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow, do the same thing where I'm just going to add some yellow over here, and I'll try to avoid that pink. I'm going to grab a little bit of white and I'll do the same thing. So it's still quite yellow, but it's just a little more. Okay. There. Okay, so since I just got finished mixing this yellow, I may as well start with this color. Because I'm going to be rotating between all of these hues, and even the red, we'll add a little bit of red. So you can kind of just go with how you feel initially. Just kind of, you're going to be rotating, adding little pops of color here and there. And as you go, you can just kind of keep in mind that you're trying to keep these ones here, which we initially kind of outlined with a bit of highlight. You're going to want those ones to be a bit more lighter than these, and kind of keep these mostly just like, even like you can mix an orange up. We're going to do that. You basically just add some yellow and pink together, and you can add some orange in the background, or a little bit of lighter red, but you really want to just keep these darker for the most part. So I'm going to just start off by, I'm doing the same thing where I've got the tip of my brush facing the opposite direction, and I'm just going to outline these again. Since we are working with the yellow, I'm going to get a little more, and I may add a mist of water. If you don't have a spritzer or a water bottle, you can just do the same thing. You can add a little bit of just a drip of water to your paint instead, and just kind of loosen it, or to let it be a little bit more flowing. So I'm just, my paint's gotten a little bit sticky, so it's pretty dry in this room that I'm in. My husband's actually building me a little art shed out the back currently. I should actually post some pictures, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do my videos in there, because it's probably going to be a bit more functional. Right now I'm in a basement studio, and it's a bit challenging sometimes to get everything set up and whatnot down here. Okay. Alright, so I just kind of outlined those. Now, you can also come now and just do really like free. My paint's gotten sticky again, so I'm just grabbing a bit more water. I just actually added, like, I grabbed my paint water and I grabbed a little bit of it, and I just added some more into it. And I'm going to just kind of I start right here at the tip, and then I just kind of go in and I follow that same angle. I'm not really doing the center a whole lot right now at this point. I'm just going to do every other one. There, so you can see it kind of gradually getting shape and starting to look. It's getting some personality happening there, so that's nice. And then you can even outline like these ones. Okay, so Now you see, so I've got this yellow on my brush. I'm not going to worry when I'm rotating between every color like that I need to wash my brush super well or anything. You can even just give like a little wipe, unless you're working with like the black or the red. So I'll just go like, maybe I'll grab some of this straight pink now, just to kind of switch it up. And I'm just going to do a check on this camera feed. I can't promise that it will stay. There's something, this camera here that I'm using is actually an iPhone, and it works through Wi-Fi connection, and it actually, it's kind of gives me trouble. So what I'm going to do is actually get a proper web camera for this as well. I thought I could get away with using this way, but I find it's kind of interesting sometimes. I'm sure that there's a way to get it to work properly, but I'm not super technically inclined, so okay. I just like to paint. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of go over and do just little thin lines here and there with this pink. It's really cool to see if I had the black light on, and you'll see in a little bit. It's kind of fun to paint with these paints in black light, because it kind of gives you like a different perspective of like what you're doing. Like for instance, these right now would probably be like super glowing, the lines that I'm doing, so you're seeing like a different perspective, and then you'll flick the light on and it's like totally different almost. So it's kind of neat to switch back between like glow and just like daylight or regular light, and see how the two kind of change as we see just with the lighting changing. So it's pretty cool. There's some really interesting ones that people have done. They get so creative. They'll add, I've seen ones where like you can, it'll be a scene, and like if you turn the black light on, then it's like a night scene. So they've made it kind of pop out as a moon, and then if you turn the lights back on, the moon disappears and there's like a sun and it's daylight. It's really neat. Or different ideas like that are really, really fun. Okay, so that's probably good for that color. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to grab this. You can take a look at this if you wanted some like inspiration of colors and whatnot. There's a bit of orange going on here, so it's starting. You can see it's starting to mix in. When you come back and do kind of like more of the darker highlights, this will all pop really well too. I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm just going to add a few more of the those colors. I'm also just going to do a little bit of the start of the little sprigs as well, and I'll walk you guys through that too. Okay. I'm going to go move this over and make sure you guys can see the red. So I'm going to go and grab a little bit more of this, and I'm even going to grab a little bit of yellow too. You can kind of just dab a little bit of both, and it'll give your brush stroke some variation even, or the pop of color. It'll kind of change. And you'll get sort of like an orange, or even a surprise of color. I kind of just don't overthink it. I just kind of grab it, and what you're kind of aiming for is contrast, I guess. So if you do like a line and it's not really like showing up well, you can always add a little bit of the lighter hues in there. You'll see here now as I work through it, and I continue to add these. I try to follow the lines, the same lines as I go, and I just sometimes if you step back too from your painting, I'm gonna widen that a little bit. Sometimes if you step back and have a view of your piece from further back, you'll get a different perspective too. Sometimes when you're really close up for so long, you sort of can't see your piece in a different, like in a fresh perspective, I guess. Everything just sort of blurs in together. So I think that's good for now for that initial layer. Again, when you come back, I may just add a few as I'm talking, but when you come back to the piece, I might even add a little bit of white here and just kind of stick that and brighten that up. You probably can't see it too well on this palette, but you might see it on here kind of pop. Yeah, there you go. So it's really starting to pop now. So as you do this, now when you come back, again, a third time even, it'll be like really cool because it'll really show up all of these colors because you've got that light there. When you add any other color over top of it, it's going to really show up. It's going to be like a good base for it. So I like to kind of keep the outsides of them nice and bright too. I'm going to add maybe orange. And you see, I'm not really going with any pattern of color, just sort of rotating between each one. So if I'm working with like yellow, I'll switch to pink next and kind of so forth. And then I like to, from time to time, just re-highlight these ones as well. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so now on here you'll see like right around the center there's kind of like a bit of sprigs that kind of look like they're wrapped and coming out from the inside. So just wanted to show you that when I'm adding these, that they actually kind of like go in a little bit into the black area. So I'm going to start doing those. I'll do it up close as much as possible so that you guys can see like a close-up of it, but I'm going to use the pointy brush. I call it the pointy brush. It's a round brush, I believe. This is a round 0. But I mean, any brush that has like a finer point. I think sometimes they're referred to as spotters or different things, but I just call them like fine tipped brushes. Those kinds. So I'll just show you up close here. Oh, that's kind of blurry. Shadow. Maybe this camera's better for that. But yeah, it's just a little fine tip. So what I'm going to do is I wet that brush and then I just kind of like shaped it out back into a nice tip. Like sometimes I'll do that because if you ever notice, like after you wash your brushes, they'll be all kind of like that fine tip will be kind of all frayed out. And if you just kind of like reshape it to get that fine tip once it's wet, and then you can dip it in the paint and it'll give you the shape that you want. So I'm going to go in with just straight titanium white, and I'm just going to lightly coat. Oops, I got a little bit of yellow, but that's okay. It's still fairly light. Okay, so I'll come up close. This might be a little bit awkward because I'm like painting in the mid-air, but I just want it to be close because these are such fine details that you might not be able to see it from further back. Oh yes, June. I just checked to see if anyone was commenting, and absolutely. This should have a replay, and it will be up for good, so you can come back and watch it as many times. You can stop and rewind. Hopefully, that's the settings that I've got down. The last one worked out well. It's still up there, I believe. So, yeah, don't worry. You're hopefully get your chance to come back and finish it, June. And I thank you so much for coming by. It's nice to see you joining. And if you have any photos you want to send me of your picture, I'd love to see them, but no pressure. Okay, don't feel obliged. Okay, so I'm going to start with these center ones. So what I'm going to do is when I just put a little dot kind of there, and then I'll just kind of flick outwards. I'll just drag that out. So try to get closer, and I like to kind of make them like random. Like I don't really want them to be like super symmetrical all around, and I kind of flick them different ways. So all I'm doing is kind of like dragging that paint out and letting it trail off. So I'm kind of easing off on the pressure on the brush. It's kind of hard to get that centered there. Okay, so I'll get a little more white paint just so again. Okay. Whoops. All right. So I'm going to just do a little dot, and I'm just going to drag that outwards. And maybe over here. Those ones. Whoops. And a dot.
Oh, I probably had my hand in the way that time. I wasn't really looking. But maybe one there. Well, that's probably good for that. I might do one right at this little edge, just look like it's kind of going to continue on. So there, that's all there is for that one. The rest are basically the same. They're all kind of going to be like following that same pattern outwards. The only difference is when you get to the edge, you're going to start kind of doing a little bit of these tiny dots. And you can even do these now, actually. That might help to kind of... So, I'm going to try to... Sorry, this is mirrored, and I believe it's like hard to balance a little bit because like I want to go one way. It's like trying to do something in the mirror, and it's confusing to go the wrong way, or you keep going the wrong way. Okay. So all I'm doing is just kind of lightly dotting this all the way around. And there's no like certain number of dots. You just kind of lightly speckle it, I guess. Hopefully you guys saw that. Maybe if I stand this way. Okay. There. Okay. There. So there's little dots at the tip of the brush with the titanium white. So I'll just put this back here. And I'm going to go around and just kind of, you can even look at like this reference. I'll show you this just as like a refresher if you don't have the photo on hand. So it just kind of, you just kind of continue on, and these are really random. There's no like line, like see, they don't really go in a line. You just kind of keep adding them. Something I will mention is you can kind of try to make them like bigger to smaller, kind of gradually shrinking down just slightly. Some of these may be a bit bigger because it's almost like this center band would probably be a little more raised. So I guess that gives the illusion that this is sort of bending inward the other way, and as well as this one. So these ones might be a little smaller. In this middle band section, the little kind of sprigs are going to be a tiny bit bigger. Now that's just a general, I mean, obviously there's some variation in that, but that's kind of also this effect where you put the little dots. It sort of gives that fading away effect. So that's just another tip. Sometimes those little details can really help to define things. So I'm going to just start working away. I'm going to try to hold this up for you guys, this maybe on this angle. And so I'm just going to kind of start working away. Whoops. I like to try and give like a fine tip, but it's okay if some of yours aren't exactly, like if the tail of it isn't like exactly pointed, it's fine. It's kind of tricky with this little brush. And I like to face them different like spin them different directions or curve them, per se. And like, see, I've put a lot like sort of in a row, so I'm going to put one kind of off to the other way, or like down a little bit, just so they're not so uniform. I like them to be a little bit more random. And yeah, I'm just going to go along. It's kind of up to you how many of these you want to add. I mean, you can get really detailed with this. One of my flowers that I do, it's a Gerber, a daisy, and I do add quite a bit of these. And there's a daisy as well that I do, and there's I did a lot of those details in this area, and it looks really nice to add the detail, but I think it looks nice too to just kind of make it more subtle as well. So kind of depends on the piece, I guess. All right, so I'm going to leave those there and just sort of let them set a little bit. Now I'm going to take this this angle brush here, again, my smaller angle brush, and I'm going to start doing some of those darker highlight areas, or darker areas in shadows in between the flower. It is going to take a little tiny bit of shading, but I'm going to show you guys close up like how I'm doing that for anyone who's not familiar with shading. But I'm going right back into this. I'm not sure if you remember earlier where it was we mixed the black. It was about a third black, or a third of red with 2 parts black. So you're really just kind of, it ends up looking almost like a deep purple or like a chocolate brown almost. But there's no like there's no exact hue. It's just, it's going to look very, very dark. You don't really want to start off with like just the straight black for these shadows. They may be a bit too bold. So all I'm going to do, I'll just do an example of a couple. And I don't want to do too many at once because I don't want these initial lines to dry because then I won't really be able to blend them. So I just kind of start with this. So it's kind of like I just kind of shape or like lay my shapes first. That's sort of like a blending technique that I like to do is I don't like immediately start trying to blend. I'll just lay my shape out and then I want to come back with a clean dry brush. So I'm going to dip my brush over here into my water and I really drag it off the bottom, like even to get the excess paint. Like I'm just really trying to get as much as possible of that pigment off, and then I'm going to just kind of lightly squeeze some of the moisture out. Now, you may end up having to add a little more to your brush depending on how wet your paint stays. Like if it's not lifting or blending, then you may need to add a bit more, but I always say start off with as least as possible. So here's an example of like how I'm going to blend where the two colors where they meet. I'm going to just kind of drag my brush. Now it doesn't start lifting right away. It'll take a few tries of going back and forth, but it will, or it should start to kind of lift and give that blurred effect. Oh, sorry, I'm going sideways again. So just like that. And you can see now the difference between here and here. This one's sort of like a fuzzy, and I'm not kind of going down or up. I'm just kind of staying in that same area, like back and forth. So when I get to the end, I just flick my brush up and I go back like that. And then this one here, see my brush is quite dry now and I've picked up a lot of paint. So I may now rinse my brush. And that's the thing too, when you're working with these like such little paint, you kind of always want to have your brush as free of paint as possible, because just even a little bit of paint. So I just rinsed and patted again. And then now you see when I come back, my brush is a little bit wet, so it should pull this paint better, and it doesn't already have paint on it again now, so I can get that nice translucence, because if I had paint on my brush, it would just muck all that nice red up. So there. So that's a close up. So if you look from far, it's just kind of a bit more subtle instead of it being like so bold. And you can also do the scrumbling or scumbling, I believe it's called, where you just kind of lay your brush over those lines. Like if your paint's still wet and you have a dry brush and it's gonna pull, that's a really kind of quick and it's a fun way to do it too, because you can kind of here, I'll move this over. You kind of have a bit of control where you can kind of keep continuing on with it. I'll do it slow so you guys can really see. You see, as I do that, I'm kind of dragging the paint. I can kind of control the shape of the shadow I'm pulling out until inevitably my brush will run out of that pigment. But you can really go far with it, and that sort of gives a nice shadow too. You can see from far. So there's two different kind of techniques, and this one it obviously has a bit more control where you're kind of staying in this one area. You can come back, and I just grabbed a little bit more of the dark on my brush, and you can kind of re-add some at the bottom. Say you wanted to darken up that bottom, like this one's a little like a nice dark at the bottom, and this one kind of lost a lot of that as I was blending. So you can re-darken it. So I laid my shape, and then I'm going to just rinse my brush again. So whenever you're going into blend, I sometimes on my paint hits I'll say that like just dip and dab whenever you're going into blend. So it's a handy little kind of technique or trick to remember. So now I'm just kind of going over it again and kind of trying to blend that out a bit. So I just am kind of going over it gently and trying to fuzz that out a little bit. And there, so you've got the start of the blending. So and then you can kind of, if you see, that's pretty wet, so I can't really do that scumbling technique on this one yet, but once it gets a little more tacky, you can you can try that in areas if your red area in your background is very dry, and you're not going to pull the background paint up too much. So I kind of just experiment and see what works best for you depending on what part of the painting you're working on. Those are just a couple of techniques I wanted to just show anyone who's sort of new. I know that's something common that people have questions with is blending. So now here I'm going to do this one as well. So all of the red petal, the dark deep red petals essentially, you're going to want it. So this one here I'm just going to kind of scumble a bit of the shadow like this, like that. And this one here I'm going to maybe just drag up a little bit, and I'm going to leave that shape there, and I'm going to rinse my brush now. And each time I really want to make sure I squeeze a lot of that moisture out. This paint's still pretty thin, so it would be, I wouldn't want to bring or loosen it too much that it is affecting the behind color. So I'm kind of just going to do a bit of both. So I'm just dragging my brush back, and I'm kind of staying away from this center. I'm just going along these lines here, and then you can kind of pull that shadow up a little bit. And you can leave it and come back, but as you see, it's starting to get, it almost makes these front ones like give that nice pop. Okay, so right at this point, there's not too much left for this piece, except for you're going to come back in and kind of continue on adding more and more color. Now you'll see at this point, this is going to be where it really shows. If you have a clean brush, you can kind of dip right in, and these colors here are just really going to be really vibrant. So I'm just grabbing this straight pink, and I did grab a little bit of the white just to help with the, so these are pretty much dry now, so you'll get that really bright kind of mist to it, where it's going to show up really well. And then I'm going to switch to yellow. I'm going to come back, and there you see, like, it's really kind of showing up well. And you just kind of go along, and you can continue adding those colors in until you like the look of it. Once these sort of have a chance to dry, you can come back and add like bright yellow to these white areas, and you may want to go over those sprigs again. Like, mine are pretty faint, so they're not really showing up as a bright white. You really want to have a good background for those. And I'm just going to add a few more of these really bright yellows. And I'd say we got about another 10 minutes or so to the end of this. I like to give people a timeline of how we're coming along with it. And I will say that if anybody had to leave early, or they're just joining and they wanted to do this paint night or paint lesson, you should be able to rewatch this. Like, I have the settings set so it should stay. And I'm going to show you guys the last few little, like, kind of techniques or the last few, details that I like to add to this that really, I think, give it a nice pop, is I like to go in then with my white. This is just like taking white. And maybe just add a little bit of yellow, mostly white. And I'm going to come in, and I'm actually going to just very carefully go right around all of these petals again. So it just gives them a nice, like, defining sort of, it just defines them and kind of separates them again. And I like that kind of final touch. And then when you add the little sprigs again, they're really going to pop also. So you'll see the painting will kind of start to come together. You have a more finished feel to it. And also these ones here, the darker ones. So when I'm going to switch now And I'm gonna rinse my white off of this angular brush, and I'm gonna come in and I'm just gonna take maybe some pink and some yellow, and I'm gonna mix a bit of orange, and then I'm gonna add a bit of red to that. So, because I don't want it to be super bright or super light, I want it to still be dark. For these, this is for the darker petals, so I'm gonna add some red to that. So it's just kind of gonna be a bit of orange mixed in with the red, so that the red is going to be a different hue than this red, and you'll see the difference when I come here. So actually, that's not really showing up as contrasted. So that's when I say you just add a little more and keep continuing that till you see a contrast. So you don't want it to be too bright either. Like you don't want to lighten those too much. So that's probably going to show up. So you can do like a little. This over so you see. So that right there, like that's probably going to show up a bit more. So if you just kind of do some lines on that, I'm grabbing maybe a bit more of this yellow, brighten it still, and then so the orange is not so vibrant, so it's not going to like take away from the darkness of it. You can kind of go in there. You can't really see from far away, but up close you can kind of see. This gives the petals a little bit of texture. And one more step. This will be kind of like the finishing touch. Aside from the green, or the green. Aside from the sprigs there, like re-highlighting those, and that's something you can do, like if you've already gotten past this point and you're just waiting, you can go ahead and at any time, whenever those are dry, go and do a second coat on your sprigs, with your little titanium white sprigs, and just recoat them so they're a bit brighter, I would suggest. And then I'm going to take this brush here, and I've put my neon green here, and I'm going to go in and just get a coat of these. And this is going to be like really, you're going to want to be sparing with these. Now it's up to you. You can add more green than I am, but just for to go with the theme of this painting, I'm just kind of adding very little of this. It's really just to kind of give it a little kind of personality. Really, it's give it some color pops here and there, and give it even more of that kind of funky color look. Okay, so I'm not going to add a whole lot of these. I can show you that here on this piece. There's really not a lot of green, and it's really even hard to see, but you see closer to the edge, you'll get a little bit of green going on, but it's not a whole lot. But it does give like a nice, I really like the effect it gives to these. So. So I'm not overthinking it, I'm just kind of adding a few here and there. And then I always say green is like a great color to add to these background ones, but really sparingly, just kind of here and there, and it just gives them a bit of texture, but yet it doesn't brighten them a whole lot. So it's like they still look behind, they look like they're deeper and kind of still behind. So and you just kind of go, I'm just doing little lines here coming from the top, like all the rest of them. There. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pointed brush again, and I'm going to redo my little sprigs on the inside of the flower, the little seed sprigs. I know that they have a name, but I cannot think of what it is. Okay. So I'm just going to call them sprigs. Okay, and then I'm going to even redo these little dots here, just so that they kind of stand out a little bit more, and you see. And like I said, like you can continue on and add even more color layer after layer. There's really no limit to it, and you kind of can just play with it. I like that about this particular piece because it's almost like free because there's no, like it's freeing. You don't have to stress out too much about how everything is, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's very forgiving. You can like add things here and there, and they're not gonna, doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so I'm even adding a little bit of white to some of these. This is just like some titanium white. This is with my pointed brush still. I just thought I would add a little bit of highlight to some of those areas. Just little lines. You can use the angle brush too. Yeah, so just like that. And they're all going to kind of turn out a little bit different too. Like as you go along, and you can just step back and see how bright you like it. And then, so I'm going to leave that now for, I'm not going to add too much more to that because I don't want it, I want to keep the lines nice and bright, and the more, if I kind of keep rubbing over them, they'll kind of lose their definition. So I'll just leave that. You can kind of see how each layer gets brighter and brighter. The only other like last thing I would probably do is take this yellow and go over some of these white sprigs. So you can see now, because they have, now you ideally want to wait for this to dry, but I'll just show you a few how they work. And then this is going to be a good time for me to also turn on the black light. But because if you try to add this yellow like before adding the white, it wouldn't be as bright. The yellow wouldn't pop as much. It would just be very kind of dull because the white gives it like a background, I guess. But you see now it's really, really bright and kind of nice. And even if I waited and did more layering on those sprigs, it would be even brighter. But so yeah, and you can see now it's getting its definition, and you can continue on adding more and more, and how you like. I'm gonna first of all just say thank you to everybody that came out and painted and came online. I think it's so awesome to see, especially some new I was gonna say faces, but new names that I have not painted with before. So that's really cool for me. And again, if you want to share your work or ask me any questions at all, I'm always happy to answer them. And I really enjoy sharing my art with others. So and helping anyone out who may feel stuck with their piece, or they need. Sometimes it's just something that is simple but doesn't. If you're not used to painting all the time, it can feel kind of overwhelming at some points. But I know that there's if you just kind of take it step by step and don't worry so much during the process, then it ends up where it'll all kind of come together in the end. So yeah, I just want to say good night to everybody. I'm going to do a quick demonstration of the black light. I'll do a few little brush strokes here and there just to kind of paint along. And so what you're going to see now, I'll say goodbye if anyone doesn't want to stick around for that, but I'll quickly just turn off. You might see darkness for a split second. I'm going to turn off the lights. I'll flick on this black light first. I'll just plug this in, and then you should see the painting glowing. I'll do a little bit more details, but you won't miss anything. I'm just going to kind of re-highlight and add a few more of what we've already done, and then yeah, so thanks again. Hopefully if anyone had to miss this and wanted to do it, they can rejoin and watch the replay. I'll try to get it kind of shared on each of my channels and whatnot so you can find it easily. Still working through all that stuff, but thanks again. And also I'm going to have a poll up that's going to have two of the next possible paintings, and I'd really love if anyone was interested, if they could come by and just select which one they would prefer to do. It helps me to kind of, it's a fun way to pick the next painting and know what you guys are wanting to paint. So okay, I'm going to do this light here. It should just take me a moment. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna just, I've got the light on, but I kind of need to get the other lights off first to see the effect of it. Okay, so now you can see even with the, well, don't know if it, oh yes, okay, so that's it, just like, there's still a ton of lights on in here. Now you'll see just how many lights I've got going on here in this studio. Okay, so I'm going to take this one down now. And here's this one. I have so many plugs going on. Okay. Okay. This one's right there. Oh, I pulled the wrong one. Oh, there we go. All right, so that one. And then we got, it's going to get like even more, it's going to glow more and more the more lights I get off here. Okay. There's that. And okay, and I have one more. Okay, here we go. Yeah, keep that off. My daughter just come by. She can hear me up there, so she flicked the light off for me. So there you go. So there we go. So you see it's glowing now. This is really fun. This is my favorite part. So, there you can see like the, yeah, the glow. Okay, so I'm just like a little kid here. I just need some glow sticks. Alright, so this palette too. Colors now. It's kind of, I mean, it's really hard to capture on the camera actually, but it's kind of a neat effect. I also have the glow of the laptop also. Maybe if I close that. Let's see. Oh yeah, actually I can turn my brightness down. Let's see if that. Oh no. There we go. Okay, so see now we have the little sprigs, how much that shows up, right? So now when I do these, like with the straight neon, it's really gonna pop more. And I think that was one of my darker petals, so I won't do that, but kind of helps too, like if you really are trying to get really to see where you're painting, it shows up really well. So this is really fun to do with kids. You just kind of freak out. There we go. Oh, I should actually grab the other one too. You can see that one, how it glows as well. And then I like to do a few of these actually off the side too, like this. Alright. Too much fun, I'm getting carried away. Okay. I think I'll leave it at that. I'll just pull this one up too. Because why not? And hopefully you can, I'm not sure if you can see that glowing or not. And turn this. Oops. Kind of different from different angles. Yeah, it is kind of hard to capture, but it's kind of fun. Whoops. Alrighty. You guys can see that. Alrighty. Well then, that's all for tonight, guys. Send me your paintings. Come check out our poll to see if you want to pick a painting for next Sunday. We'll be back on doing another one. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. It's been a busy week, so I haven't even really thought that far ahead. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and thanks again for coming, and I'll see you next week.